All right, getting to this. There was a group of, and this is, I just want to let you know this is happening. A group of people, 67 of them, who met virtually for 4 days back in June to hold simulations known in the military and in intelligence communities as so-called war games, right? But where they simulated various outcomes. This time it wasn't about any type of military incursion. They simulated the potential outcomes from the Biden-Trump election. In these war games, you have John Podesta, a former top aide to President Barack Obama and President Bill Clinton's former chief of staff. He played the role of Joe Biden. Then you had two outspoken Republican critics of President Trump. They're never Trumpers, David Frum and Bill Kristol. They played the role of President Trump. Now you can imagine these are all people who really have no love for the president. And I just want to cut right to the chase because the result of their simulations, which they guesstimated 4 scenarios, and you tell me what scenario is missing from this. The first scenario they considered what would happen in the event of, one, a decisive Biden win. What would happen in the country if Joe Biden won decisively in November? The second scenario they concluded, what would happen if Joe Biden had a narrow win? The third scenario they concluded is what would happen if there was a close electoral win for President Trump, but he lost a popular vote by 5 percentage points. And then the fourth scenario they considered the possibility that the outcome remained in doubt for weeks because of a deluge of mail-in ballots. Now, can anybody imagine there's another scenario that's conspicuously absent from their considerations? Before you answer, they rendered a 22-page report on their wargaming, and this was the name. This group, they even have a name. Ooh, it's the Transition Integrity Project. Ooh, sounds all official, like a referee with a whistle. They concluded, hand-wringing begins, that, the only outcome, in almost every outcome, it's going to be violence and mass unrest in the streets. The only outcome that prohibits unrest in the streets is if Joe Biden wins decisively. Because if it's close, people are going to be upset. If President Trump wins, people are going to be upset. It mean upset to the point of violence and rioting and chaos. If the election drags out beyond the election day, riots in the street. You know what they didn't simulate? Well, what happens if President Trump has a landslide win? They didn't consider that at all. Could that be a little bit of bias? Oh, Abe, don't confuse me with facts. Well, I want to tell you. Well, I'll give you another bit of facts before I give you my opinion on something, because I've been telling people behind the scenes here that President Trump is going to win in November. That's what I think. I could be proven wrong. I don't think I will be, though. And I'll tell you why in a second. But I want to give you this bit of information. You ready for it? I know I'll just probably get to introduce this, and I'll go into it more on the other side of the break. A coalition of more than 50 leftist groups, they call them leftists, I call them regressive, 50 regressive groups, they're preparing for, quote, mass public unrest if President Trump wins in November. This accumulation of leftist groups includes groups like Color of Change, groups like Move On, and get ready for this one, the American Federation of Teachers. Yeah. Now, why would the American Federation of Teachers be participating with a coalition of 49 other groups that are preparing for massive unrest? One of their goals, and this group calls themselves the Fight Back Table, one of their goals is to, quote, occupy bleep. It's a expletive for excrement. We're going to occupy bleep, hold space, and shut things down not just on election day, but for weeks. Now, that's one of their goals. Somebody want to explain to me why the American Federation of Teachers would be a part of something like this? Or could it be said that they have already been participating in this by brainwashing the foot soldiers of American regressivism to already set it off in Seattle and Portland and in other places around the country?
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio. Before the break, I was mentioning these 50 regressive left-wing groups who gathered to plan out strategies. They're literally planning for massive public unrest after Election Day, based on the assumption that President Trump is reelected. Georgetown University law professor Rosa Brooks, who co-founded the Transition Integrity Project, didn't I just mention that? Now, the Transition Integrity Project were the people who were wargaming back in June. Now here she is, participating with these 50 regressive groups to cultivate sources for civil unrest, strategizing to make it happen should President Trump win re-election. She said, quote, "I wish we were having these conversations 6 months ago." As if you weren't. One of their plans is to, and the Daily Beast reported this portion, quote, "encourage Western states, particularly California, Oregon, and Washington, to secede from the Union unless President Trump and the Republicans agree to certain demands." Among those demands would be including granting statehood to Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., breaking California up into 5 separate states. The purpose there would be to increase the number of U.S. senators because each state gets 2 senators. You want to guess what type of worldview and political orientation senators from California? 5 different states in California now. So it would be 4 of them would more than likely get 2 new senators apiece, 8 from there. Then Oregon and Washington, D.C., and California. I'm sorry, and Washington State. You already know what's going to happen. You already know what's going to happen. Additional concerns that they had is that we need to do this to force them to accede to our demands. Now, I've said, because people of the regressive ilk, you've heard other statements that say that they fail forward. The agenda is always priority number 1. I think these people know President Trump is going to win re-election, and they're preparing themselves for it. What has been the biggest motivating factor for the massive amounts of fundraising that have taken place? Need I remind you that the BLM organization has generated $1.628 billion in 4 months. That was all the way back in June. Who knows how much it is now with the investments of nearly all of corporate America? Who's funding Antifa? Senator Rand Paul said the people who he thought were going to kill him and his wife, they were staying in the same hotel he was in Washington, D.C., even on the same floor with him. Where are they getting this money from? These continuous nonstop protests in Portland, these people have to eat, don't they? Who's funding them? And then I mentioned the BLM organization. Can anybody tell you where they've spent any of the billions of dollars that they've raised? If they aren't spending money, what are they holding it for? I'm just telling you guys, I believe President Trump will win in November. You better buckle your seatbelts. I'm going to do a program. I encourage everybody to listen to Friday to talk about preparation. not just in light of the election, but where our country is going, where the cultural shifts have moved. What can we do to prepare ourselves? One of the things I've been talking to people in my personal circles about is eliminating debt, getting out of debt. You need to be free from the burdens and the bondages of debt. I know some of you are saying that, well, I got this going on, I got that going on. Listen, it needs to be prioritized. It needs to be prioritized. We're going to talk more about that, though, in Friday's program, Lord willing. We're going to do that. But it's my contention, folks. I'm going to tell you that there are people, and this report confirms it. I've been saying this before the report, but this report confirms it, that there are people planning to perpetuate social unrest following November. Have you heard of the movement White House Siege, where there's an effort to make basically like a chop the Chaz zone and the White House starting on September 17th that continues on through the presidential election? Now, I'm not saying they're going to be successful, but there are people planning to do that. And I'm not naive enough to think that this is the majority of people in any particular political party, anything like that. But the issue is not whether it's the majority. The issue is what contingent has the momentum, the energy, and the financial resources. If you haven't noticed it yet, there's not very much zeal behind a moderate wing of the Democrat Party. Listen, I'm just telling you like it is. So I'm saying all these things we've been reading for years in the Bible that was going to happen, and I remember at one point I thought, Lord, what is it going to look like? Folks, we are here now. We are here now. So we need to be prepared accordingly, not merely for self-preservation, but also to be effective ambassadors of the kingdom of God in this moment. So much to a degree, and this is how the contrast, the perspectives are. Remember, toward the end of the book of Acts, when the Apostle Paul was coming, they had people there weeping. They loved Paul. They urged Paul, please, Paul, don't go to Jerusalem. Paul, please. Please, 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 Paul. And Paul said, man, listen. No, they even added, Paul, if you go, you're going to be bound. You're going to be bound. And Paul said, listen, I'm not only willing to be bound. If it be necessary, I'm willing to surrender my life. Because he knows to surrender his life on this side of eternity isn't the end of the story. And then, and the Apostle Paul goes on to explain, if you read Paul's epistle to the Philippians, you read, sometimes y'all skip over this. Y'all, I'm not trying to point fingers. Sometimes people skip over this portion. But if you read all of Paul's salutations and his greetings, Paul concludes his epistle to the Philippians by saying, and the saints of God in Caesar's household greet you. Why is that significant? Paul was able to capitalize on the hostility and even the persecution against Christians in the Roman Empire to penetrate Caesar's household with the gospel. You see? That is why I'm encouraging us to have an eternal vantage point. Because listen, if we were to be honest, can I talk plainly? Some of us have made an idolatry out of luxury and comfort. That we say we're contending for the faith, but in reality, we're contending for our comfort. We're contending for our ability to order food on an app and have it delivered in 5 minutes. We like having our vehicles with seat warmers and all of these things, and those things have a higher priority for us than the kingdom of God. And I'm not saying this from a position of condemning. I am not eager, to lose my comforts. But what I'm saying is that we have to be honest with ourselves as to whether or not we have made an idol out of these things. I like having air conditioning, no doubt. But if air conditioning causes me to fight for my AC more so than I'm contending for the faith, guess what I've just done? I've made an idol out of AC. You get me? So I'm saying, man, let's readjust. Let's shift our dish, so to speak, to make sure that we're tuning into the right focal point so that then we're able to see appropriately. And yes, enjoy your hamburgers while you can. Enjoy your creature comforts while you can. But don't allow your creature comforts to own you. Possess your possessions, but don't let your possessions possess you. If there's anything in your life that you say, man, I can't go without this, guess what? It very well may be an idol for you. I'm not saying that it automatically is, but it could be. All right. More foolishness du jour. And this is just plain old stupid right here, folks. A 12-year-old Colorado Springs, Colorado boy received a 5-day suspension from school after one of his teachers spotted a toy gun in his hand during an online art class. According to the local affiliate KDVR in Colorado Springs, the boy had a neon green and black handgun with an orange tip with the word "Zombie Hunter" printed on the side. The boy didn't point the thing at the screen. He was in like a Zoom type deal in class. Literally. Because the police officers ended up being called out to his house. And the police were called to do a welfare check for him and his family. And they recorded the video that the teacher saw on the police officer's body camera. And it shows the boy literally picking the toy gun up from one side and shifting it to the other side out of screen view that just happened to be recorded on camera. And the teacher suspended the boy for 5 days. And get this, if their concern was for the boy's safety, you think that they would have called the parents, right? Did they call the parents? No. Not the principal, not the teacher. Nobody contacted them. Nobody contacted the parents of this child. The first notification they have of this is the police showing up at their houses. And then the boy is suspended for 5 days. For 5 days. But people get mad at me when I say government indoctrination complexes. They see, I saw the picture, it's neon green with Zombie Hunter printed on the side of it. You can see it clearly in the video. The teacher suspends the boy, call the police. The police show up at these people's house for a welfare check. Guess what they do? Search their home. Y'all see? Can you see where this is? See what's going on? Guys, this is crazy. This is crazy. He literally, I'm going to describe it the way the sheriff's deputy said it. Quote, a sheriff's deputy recorded the video on his body cam and showed it to the boy's father. The boy's father's name is Curtis Elliott. The video shows his son sitting at home on his sofa when he momentarily picks up the toy gun on the right side of where he's sitting and moves it to the left side. Not realizing that in the process, his teacher and fellow students saw him move the toy gun across the computer screen. And they suspended the child in the name of him threatening fellow students and the teacher with violence. Treating the virtual environment as if it were the classroom. Folks, this is where we are, El Paso County, Colorado. This is where, what? This is insane. This is insane. Can you imagine the trauma that this little boy faced? The police showing up at his house. Oh, you have a gun. A neon green with Zombie Hunter written on the side of it? Good grief. And if that's not enough, some of you probably saw this as well. Well, I'll spare you that one. Let me end on a high note. There was a third-party survey conducted by an organization that's based in the Netherlands. The organization is called Gamen. They actually wrote their report in Farsi, investigating the rapid growth of Christianity in the nation of Iran. This research group confirmed that there's been exponential growth of Christianity in Iran because based on their survey, they found that 1.5% of all respondents to the survey in Iran indicated that they identified themselves as Christians. Now, 1.5% of the population of Iran, which has 80 million people in the nation, shows that there are over 1.2 million Christians in Iran. That is a 19.6% annual growth rate among the evangelical Christian church in the Muslim nation of Iran. It confirms what I've been reporting here, that people are leaving Shiite Islam in Iran in record numbers. I shared before how the Iranian government, its Minister of Intelligence, convened a gathering of clerics trying to figure out what's going on. And Islamic people are reporting that they're looking for peace. And they're saying, how can we say that Islam is a religion of peace? Because even amongst our own tradition, the clerics are continuously fighting amongst one another in Iran. So that is an encouraging story, because in the doldrums of Iran, where it literally is a death sentence to convert from Islam to Christianity, the gospel is spreading like gangbusters. Folks, this is encouraging. I told you, when the arrows come out, guess what we do? We fight in the shade.